Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures, the new year 2026. And we're on episode something or other. It went away. I think we're on like 346 or something like that. Still getting used to YouTube, folks. But in any case, it was a wonderful holiday. I had a good time. I think Bet had a good time. And we're coming back in here strong. And keeping with the holiday theme, thought we'd talk a little bit about some tips and tricks for testing some of that new gear that you folks have out there. Now, in the past, we have done episodes on how to test gear, and we talked about the importance of testing at home and doing it in a safe environment and stuff like that. So we're not really talking about that stuff. We're literally talking about like what's the things you should do and look for, and what are some of the common mistakes or maybe misunderstandings that come with new gear that people may not understand or potentially do incorrectly. Especially if you're newer to the bushcrafting journey. If you read the description there, this is maybe geared more towards the newer folks out there joining this wonderful pastime. But I do believe that some of the people that have been into it for a little while, they might get a few tidbits out of this too, simply because you don't know until you know. You know what I mean? I know I have things that I've done in the past that perhaps weren't correct. Or maybe there was a more correct way, or maybe I didn't take something into consideration. All these things are really easy to let slip by unless somebody tells you. So if you're just here for the leisure, well, I mean, kick back. Did we miss something? Let us know. Maybe if you're joining us out there like Steve from the Drifting Spore, you can always throw in your 2 cents. And Happy New Year to you too, Steve. Or if you are new to the sport, or once again, pastime, maybe grab your notebook. Anyway, how was your holiday there, Ben? We never actually even mentioned it in our little pre-chat here.
It was pretty good, you know. We had our ups and downs, I guess. We had some weather and stuff, and also a minor health issue or two. Nothing major, just flus and stuff. But you know, it all adds up, I guess. But overall, Christmas was pretty good. We enjoyed ourselves, and we definitely got some new stuff. I got some stuff I'll be testing this year,
Nice.
and I think that'll kind of lead into what you want to talk about. And immediately I have a couple ideas I can throw out there, but did you get anything exciting, anything you want to talk about before we go too far?
No, I mean, the holidays were pretty good. I did get some gear this year. I think I mentioned it before, or if I didn't, I picked up that minus 30 something sleeping bag that I actually have to get out of the sunroom and into the woods to test. But other than that was kind of my big piece of gear this year. We went pretty small for Christmas. This was the year, and I kid you not, that we have deemed the good enough year. It just seemed like we were ice skating uphill the whole time. And much like yourselves, it was just flu season. The weather here has been terrible, like comparatively to other years. It's been a storm after storm. It's just, there was some family stuff going on. They were sick and things like that. It was just the year of good enough. So we stayed small, but we had a lot of fun. It was very close family. We still went and got to see everybody. We had some good laughs. We had some friends over for New Year's. We had a lot of fun, even though it was a little smaller year. And man, I almost liked it more. I'm not going to lie. The not having to travel everywhere, just be home with the family. That was kind of fun. Not, like I said, not going to lie.
Yeah, traveling is over, especially Christmas. I always found the weather was hard for travel. Uh, I always got stuck coming or going. Yeah, so a couple of thoughts I want to throw out there really quickly, just because you said like this is for somebody getting new stuff and what do you need to do? And one of the things I think is newer, it's the last few years that wouldn't have been a thing in the past, but it definitely is more so now, is definitely to download any manuals, applications, or anything else you need for any gear. Now, that may sound strange to some people, but many types of gear now, oftentimes like smartwatches, which you may be taking, or if you're getting compasses and that, or camera gear, or any of this stuff, oftentimes have apps that you need to operate it. Like, here, touch.
Well, you're talking to the little pooper there. Just going to say hello to Bill joining us from Survival War. If for some reason you have not heard about his YouTube channel, be sure to check him out. That's Survival War Official. We're going to have him on the podcast coming up here in the future, and we're going to chat a little about his channel and what he does out there too. But getting back to the topic, now that you've got the furry one kind of contained again, keep on going, Ben.
Yeah, so apps definitely. Also, like a lot of things now, you don't get like an owner's manual or a user's manual or instructions. Oftentimes, you'll have to download the files for that or the PDFs and stuff like that. So anything you need to get instructions or videos you have to download to properly use them or set them up. This can be things like tents, backpacks, helmets, you name it. Now, often this stuff is now coming through that. So that's one thing. Then also, if it has some kind of electronics or batteries involved in it, look at making sure you have the batteries for it or that it's being charged. It's charged before you take off. Don't assume it shows up fully charged. I know we've talked about things like lights and stuff in the past. These things, make sure they're fully charged before you leave. Otherwise, you might be disappointed when it only lasts a couple of hours, because you don't know what happened to it before you received it. Like if it got left on, if it was tested, if it's been sitting in the store for weeks, months, or whatever. So just ideas like that. That's a really simple one.
Nope, funny enough, I'm going to snowball on your idea a little bit there. I did break it down into some pieces of equipment or categories of equipment. And seeing we're talking about flashlights and batteries, I'm just going to run with that one. I had make sure it's charged. The caveat to that I'm going to throw out is even if you check it when it comes out of the package and it's like, holy crap, this thing's already fully charged, run it down once at home and then do a full charge on it, depending on the battery makeup. A lot of these things need to be cycled a few times. And I mean, you can get like nickel cadmium, lithium ion, polymer ion, a few other things like that. And they all have different charging methods to them. But generally, it's good to wear something down a little bit, at least out of the box, and then charge it back up. That way, if there is like a lingering overvoltage, I don't know what the technical term is of this, but from what I understand, it thinks there's more voltage in that battery because it's been sitting for so long, and then when it actually puts a load on it, it drains it a little quicker. Maybe Ben can explain this a little better. This is more up his alley than mine. As for if you drain that down and then let the controller recharge that back up, you kind of get a true fullness versus that kind of residual fullness. Just help me out here, Ben.
Yeah, I think some batteries do have some type of break-in period where the first couple of charges and discharges don't get you your full amount to it, and then also later on there is a area where you stop getting as much out of a battery, so they do start to produce less and less. So even really high quality batteries, some of them are only good for say 10,000 recharges, which is a lot, but it's not as much as you might think, depending on how often you have to charge it.
And that's the thing. A lot of people, especially like take a cell phone, for instance, it may be good for 10,000 charges, but if you throw your phone on the charger every night before you go to sleep, and then maybe you top it up once, twice, maybe 3 times during the day, because it's not dead, but you're just topping it up. Even though you're just topping it up, you're running that charge controller. It technically works towards that battery breakdown. So that's another important thing that I have under flashlights and battery operated tools is if it's used, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with used, try to get a little bit of history from that item, especially if it has a life cycle. So things like flashlights and stuff like that, super common to buy them secondhand because you can get really expensive flashlights, especially from people like maybe not us, but maybe somebody a little more into them where they're buying them, reviewing them, trying them, finding the one they like, and they just get rid of the ones they don't want to keep, which is great. Awesome way to do stuff. But see if you can get a little history behind it. Like, how long did that person own it? Did they just try it out, didn't like it, and moved on? It's kind of like buying a used car. As silly as that sounds, same thing, even with a good piece of gear, because in the end, you want to make sure the gear is reliable when you get in the woods so you can enjoy it to its fullest. Much like a car. You want to make sure that car works to its fullest so you can enjoy it to its fullest.
So the same thing is years ago, everything came with really detailed instructions. Sometimes now it's better to find that stuff online. They're trying to save paper, trying to save resources and stuff. And some things I've bought in the last few years just come with videos to show you how to use it. So you have to get those.
Scan the QR code and figure it out.
That sucks if the first time you try to actually use it happens to be 10 miles in the woods and there is no cell service. So now you're trying to figure it out on your own. And then it tells you to make sure you do this one thing. And you're like, oh, it's too late for that now, right?
Make sure that you brought piece Z, which you thought was a spare piece when you took this out of the box, and now nothing seems to work. So, like I said at the start, we have talked about testing things at home. That still holds true. If you want to know why, go back and look at our gear testing thing. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but there's a ton of reasons for you to test it at home.
But you kind of hit on the next thing before I let you go ahead. I'm going to
go for it. Nope, I'm going to let you roll into it, Ben.
Make sure you have all the pieces.
Exactly. This is one of those things when you take it out at home, it's not just to try it at home, it's make sure everything's there. Nothing worse than you have a tent and it's like, I can't find that one pole. And of course, you probably ran it late. You're trying to get it set up quick. It's already dark. Did you lose it in the tall grass or under the snow or whatever? Or is it just not there?
Well, and with tents is an interesting one. I find a lot of tents come with the minimum amount of pegs required. Yet there's options for more pegs. So some of your tie-outs don't necessarily get a peg. Maybe for all your points on your tent, like the skirt, but then your tie-outs don't necessarily have enough. Or oftentimes, a lot of tents I've bought are always shy 2 pegs. And that's annoying to me. So it's oftentimes worth taking a second and counting everything out, laying it down and thinking about how you want. Also, if you could preset some things up, like some things can be, like knots could be put in them, lengths could be adjusted. I have received things with 1 rope when you need 10, you're expected to cut it how you would like it. And how you do that is going to be up to you and your preference. Maybe you'll decide to cut everything the exact same length, or maybe you're going to try it a spot 2 or 3 times and realize I want 5 this way and 5 that way.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like this, once again, I know I said we weren't going to beat a dead horse, but it still proves a point. This is what we find out at home. And seeing we're talking about tents, a couple other things for your new tent or whatever is before you take it out into the woods, setting it up at home not only tells you if all the parts are there and how you want to configure it and stuff like that, which is absolutely kind of key. The other thing is, especially if it's a brand new tent, you're breaking a lot of those folds and stuff and those original creases, and you give this thing a moment to kind of stretch and rest in the shape that it's supposed to be before you get out in the woods. Because once again, depending on the, if it's dark or if it's cool or something like that, we tend to rush a little bit. Maybe, that pole's almost fit, and I bet you if I push it just a little bit more, pull just a little bit harder, I'm going to get it, instead of going all the way back through and shuffling it down, letting it stretch a little bit. So if you do that at home, you're less likely to get into the problem of maybe ripping or removing something when you're in the woods. So not only do you get the benefit of seeing if everything's there, like I said, that material, especially if it's canvas or something like that, it gets that little bit of relief time to where it can let go of all the stress from being manufactured and kind of fit the way it's supposed to and stretch just ever so slightly, so things tend to develop a memory. So if you can, especially like dome tents is what I'm thinking on this one, if you put them up and leave them up even for like an hour while you're looking at stuff, maybe waterproof it, because that's another thing. A lot of these tents and stuff, they do have a factory waterproofing on them. Every tent I get before it ever goes in the woods, when I have it set up in the yard and it's stretching, it gets a good coat of waterproofing. I don't care. I've never been in the woods before. It's getting a set of waterproofing and seam sealers coming with me the first time I go in. Figure it out. But yeah, the stretching thing is real. I see a lot of people, they buy a Walmart tent. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, by the way. If it gets you in the woods, awesome. Never open it. Take it to the woods. Try to set up in the woods. And like I said, everything's still kind of, it's tight on the tent. They're trying to put it up in tight quarters. Frustrations rise. And instead of doing things slowly, brute force and bullheadedness tend to come in, and a lot of things tend to have catastrophic malfunctions, which you can solve just by taking your time at home and like I said, let it flex, let it stretch. You're getting the benefit of everything we talked about before. Plus, it's another thing that a lot of people forget to do.
In fact, your initial break-in period for almost every piece of equipment, whether it be a pocket knife, a sleeping bag, a new shirt, a hat, whatever, does exist. There is a requirement to do this. Anything that you're going to wash regularly, oftentimes it helps to pre-wash it. Do one wash before you actually start to use it. and see how much it's going to shrink or adjust. And so the comfort it is when it's brand new and off the rack may not be the same as when you put it on the first time or the second time if you've never watched it the first time. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, everything has made potentially some kind of break-in or preparation period. It really doesn't hurt to do some research on a product and find out what other people have experienced or what they've decided to do in regards to maybe modifying or improving a product right out the gate. So it might be as a major change or a minor change. It might be putting a new edge on a knife after you get it because the factory one sucks. It may be replacing a sheath on a knife because the original one isn't quite very good or has been known to fail. Or it may be an intent, just some extra things you want to take to make it more comfortable or easy to set up or to protect it in areas that could be damaged or so on and so forth. So yeah, doing that little bit of research and prepping for it and taking the extra things oftentimes really helps.
So we kind of talked tents. We did mention this, and it's kind of part of the next systems. So the next note I had was for sleeping bags. Because once again, there's a couple things people tend to do. Not wrong, maybe more incorrect. Because I don't like to say everything is wrong. I don't want to be negative, but there is some things that are commonly missed. And the number one thing is letting your sleeping bag waft. Don't just bail it out of the bag, hop straight in it and say, this is going to be a wonderful thing because I just bought this minus 30 degree sleeping bag. And then, it's only minus 15 out and your teeth are chattering. That thing hasn't had time to waft. And when I mean waft, and we've talked about this in the past as well, go back and look at it. But the short form is all that fluff inside has to fluff up. The fluff holds air, the air's the insulation. You know what I mean? Like air is in a wonderful insulation if you can trap it. And that's what a lot of the fluff does. It traps air. But if the fluff isn't there, there's nothing to keep you warm. It can be rated as the best sleeping bag on the planet, but if it's squished this thin, it's not going to happen. It's kind of like underquilts. Underquilts, when you put them under your hammock, and I was guilty for this the first couple times I set it up, it shouldn't be tight underneath you. Because if it's like tight against you, you're just stretching it and all the waft is gone and you're going to feel cold. Should be ever so slightly just under you. Like, it's fine if you touch it, but don't have it stretched like right around you. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be a second hammock. But yeah, getting back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
With sleeping bags, I have had really good luck with this. Taking your dryer, especially if you have a nice big dryer. Don't put stuff a dryer full of a sleeping bag. You'll ruin a sleeping bag and a dryer, by the way. But if you can get your hands on a nice big dryer, throw in there with a bunch of tennis balls or a couple of tennis shoes or something like that, and just let it fluff it. I think some of them have fluff settings, believe it or not. But let it go, beat it around and stuff, and it'll break up any compressed fibers, be either down or synthetic, and get that loft going for the very first time because it's likely been packed in a packing bag for months before you receive it. And there is a proper way to store these items, and you should understand that too before you start using it, I guess. But they should be stored in a lofted position, not crushed down in a super tight sleeping bag case, which sometimes you have to do because you have nowhere else to store it. But where you can and when you can, leave it out, hang it. I hang mine upside down in the closet when I can. And
I was going to say my office is known as the sleeping bag room because if you can see to my right, there's like where's my, you might be able to see a little bit here for those that are looking. There you go. There's like the mammoth. And then if I can figure out which way to go, there's another one hanging over there. There's 3 sleeping bags hanging here in my office anyway, all from the ceiling. And for the same kind of reason, it's to keep them fluffed up and so they're not compressed and they're getting that memory of everything being compressed. If you go to Mech or something like that and you go to look for the sleeping bags, yeah, they have a whole bunch in bags, but have you ever noticed they got them hanging on little racks where you can flip through them? It's not just so you can look at them, believe it or not, it's so they stay wafted so that when you put your hand inside it and say, oh, hey, this feels warm, it's been fluffed up. You know what I mean? It's been allowed to waft. Minimum to let a sleeping bag fluff up, and that's not just like flip it open and throw it on the ground because now you still got the weight of the sleeping bag pushing down on it. Ideally, to waft them, you try and suspend them. Minimum 30 minutes, but ideally a couple of hours. And that's where most
Yeah.
people go bad. They just take their sleeping bag out, throw it in their tent. Oh, yeah, it's bedtime, guys. Crawl in, go to sleep, and it hasn't had time to waft. And now everything underneath you's already being compressed. You get the cold butt syndrome. Ah, this sleeping bag's a piece of crap. Well, it might be a piece of crap, but let it be a piece of crap on its own merit. You know what I mean? Something else is the ratings on sleeping bags. And we've talked about this at extent in the past, but once again, quick summary, they usually come with 3 ratings. There's the comfort, the low end, and then the survival. The comfort is where you're going to be fine, basically with some sort of underwear. And I don't mean what's around your waist, I mean like thermal underwear. Now, your low rating, that's where like with the thermal underwear, you're going to be a little cool, but you'll be all right. And then the survival one, it's like you're going to shiver, but you won't die. You know what I mean? And a lot of people buy their sleeping bags and go, like this one, this minus 38 or whatever it is. I can't remember. I actually have to go figure it out. It's 30 something. But anyway, that's the survival rating. I don't have the delusion that I'm going to crawl inside this thing at minus 30 and be sweating. I have the delusion that I'm going to crawl in this thing at minus 15 and be happy. You know what I mean? That's kind of the plan. Don't overreach the capabilities of the gear. They give you survival ratings in this instance on the sleeping bag. Once again, a little research. Is that the survival rating, the comfort rating? Like I said, just make sure you're testing the right thing, and it's not necessarily failing a test it can't pass. We don't judge fish by how well they climb trees. You know the old saying?
Yeah. So. Yeah, so those are some of the things. What else? What's next on yours?
Okay, so next on my list, cutting tools. And we have talked about this. We were talking about knives, but not just knives, saws, axes, machetes, like bush blades, whatever you want to call them. The first thing everybody does when they grab a knife, look it over a little bit, pop it open. Oh, that's a sharp knife. Awesome. Sharpness is an important aspect of a knife, and I completely agree with that. However, some more important things that are probably going to be more meaningful going down the road is edge retention. I can sharpen a piece of plastic, but it doesn't mean it's going to hold that edge. You know what I mean? So how is it going to hold that edge? Does it chip? Is it too hard? Does it roll too much? Is it too soft? Is it easy to put an edge back on it? Once again, maybe going a little soft. Is it harder than the hubs of hell to try and put an edge on this thing? Once again, maybe it's too hard. These are things you have to look at aside from the edge itself. Blade length or overall. Length in general is another one that's commonly misunderstood. A lot of people grab these great big bush knives and say, you know, this is my knife. You know, that's not a knife. This is a knife. And they have a place. But the reality is with that great big knife, you're probably not going to do fine skills. And people will argue this. And I know you can choke up on the blade and shorten it up and make it so that you can get detailed dexterity with it. But the reality is that knife was never made for that. So once again, we're judging a fish on how well it climbs a tree. Just because it can do it doesn't mean it should. So make sure that you're, once again, if you have a tiny little knife, oh, that's a terrible knife because there's no size to it. Well, it's probably made for doing fine work, maybe fine whittling or doing fine cuts or something like that. Make sure you are appropriately judging the accurateness of that blade. Another common
Just remember, you can't do surgery with a hunting knife. And you can't cut down a tree with a scalpel.
Yeah, and like I said, there's going to be those people that are going, well, you can. Doesn't mean you should. You know what I mean? I guess the last thing I have on that is the handle grip. A lot of people judge a knife solely on its blade and its tang and the steel it's made out of. But believe it or not, the part that of you that touches that knife at all times, hopefully, is your hand on the handle. You know what I mean? And if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff with this knife, and you'll hear bushcrafters, campers, everybody talk about, oh, I use my knife for everything. Taking that forward and that being true, that means it's going to be in your hand a long time. I have a Schrade knife here. Love the knife, hate the handle, can't use it because the handle's terrible. For me, I don't like the texture they put on it. It's like a lot of flashy in and out Kydex stuff, and it creates bad hot spots in my hand if I got to do anything with a little pressure or dexterity or accuracy on that. And literally it like creates hot spots in the crease of my hand and down my hand. It's uncomfortable. Doesn't matter how good the knife is, I can't use it.
I personally do love a really good handle, and there's sometimes things you can do to salvage a poor handle, But generally, a bad handle is always going to be a bad handle. If it's too big, if it's too small, if it's too long or it's too short, you can't do much about it. Some people I've seen wrap it with cord and stuff to sort of soften some of the grips and stuff because they found it too hard. That kind of works, but it makes it bigger. And in the rope itself can sometimes be a problem, especially if it gets wet, it'll stay wet a lot longer. It takes harder to dry, things like that. So finding a good knife that you really enjoy holding really does matter. And understanding the use of a knife makes it infinitely more important. Because every knife does have a purpose and they can be used for a range of things, but they're going to excel what they're designed to do. And then everything else is going to be something different than that.
So we do have some comments over here. I have been seeing them come up. I haven't forgot about you folks. I was on a roll. And okay, I did maybe squirrel brain it for a second. So we're going to roll back and I'm going to address the comments because we do try to do that here. We love everybody's input. So we do have Eric. We got Bill. We got Steve all hanging out in the comments there. And I always seen theirs flash up there. At least if I missed somebody, I apologize. So starting back here a little bit, of course, Steve asked if it was the year of the horse. It is most definitely the year of the horse. So here we go. Going back to testing at home, Steve, the Drifting Spore, I try my stuff out to discover what the critical fail points are. What will send me home if something goes wrong? And then we had Bill jump in there. Exactly. Even short outings are used for doing gear shakedowns. Eric joined us. We went back to Steve. I don't have years of experience either. Most times I'm doing stuff for the first time. I like setting up and practicing camps or day camps to make sure everything works before I commit to a night at a spot. Bill jumps in on that. The compacting on the back bottom of a sleeping bag is why I primarily switched to using quilts or bags and big Angus's where they're used in tandem with an inflatable pad to replace the back. And that's the thing. A lot of times on the bottom of a sleeping bag, once it gets compressed, it's toast. So with a good pad and a good inflatable pad with a little liner on top of it with some mylar, I understand where Bill's coming from on this one because I know, Ben, you were big on the over quilts there for a while, maybe still are. With a good underquilt and a good insulation under you, it is a better setup, personally opinioned, only because you're paying for a sleeping bag and only using about 3/4 off it because the bottom part of it no longer becomes useful to you because it's not really insulated because you have it crushed, which is the point that Bill was making over here in the comments.
Yeah, I have a couple of sleeping bags that are better. They make better quilts than sleeping bags, actually.
Well, that orange one that I took with you that time we went out, that's kind of where it is. Makes a wicked quilt. Sucks as a sleeping bag. One, because I'm too big for it. I got fluffier. Funny that. And two, once it's compressed underneath, because it's a synthetic material, I found it lost almost all its insulating value once it was compressed, which was unfortunate.
Yeah. So that's for sure.
Sorry.
Okay. Was there another comment you wanted to read? Or
last thing I had, nope, comments are done. Last thing I had was I was talking about water filtration. Some common things that happen with that. And I'm gonna give some bullet styles on this because there is a ton of different types of water purification methods out there. I'm thinking more like the filtration systems, Life Straws, Sawyer Minis, and the off brands of those. Make sure you flush them before you use them. Even the Life Straws and stuff like that, or anything that's carbon activated, the first couple mouthfuls of that is just nasty. So try to flush them out a little bit, and it gets, once again, I'm thinking carbon filter. The very fine particles are going to come out of the first couple mouthfuls of that. They won't hurt you, but they're not going to taste good. And it's going to clear out any kind of pathogens or stuff that may be in the system anyway. And when you read the user manuals and the information pamphlets that come with these things, they do recommend back flushing them with clean water after every use. So you take some of your filtered water, back flush them out, gets rid of the contaminants and stuff in that with clean stuff. And a lot of people fail to do that. Once you back flush it, take it in your hand a few times, try to get as much of the water out as you can so that it dries and you don't allow bacteria to breed in there. The other reason for drying it is if the weather's cold, especially with like the Sawyer Minis, huge fan of them. Their big fallback is if the water stays in them and they freeze and the tubes crack, essentially they no longer do their job.
the last thing I wanted to bring up is figure out how your gear is going to fit together, especially if you have to fit it in a pack or into a vehicle. Getting new gear seems great until you realize it doesn't really fit anything. So a new flashlight, a new knife, how are you going to carry it? How are you going to make it so that it's accessible when you need it to be, but also doesn't become a burden to you in some way, shape, or form. So once you consider everything else, that's sort of another piece to it. Oftentimes I get new gear because it's smaller, it fits more compact, or I'm able to take it out of my pack and wear it all the time because it's just a bit more efficient. You know what I mean? Or it saves me a lot of labor later on. So an example of this, and not the only example I can think of, but one that is there, is I have a diesel furnace that I'm planning on taking on some trips when I'm car camping. I also have a lightweight titanium stove. The lightweight titanium stove definitely is smaller and easier to transport. But once you get to the site, keeping it full of wood takes a lot more effort. Where a couple liters of diesel is very easy and I'm already lugging the vehicle. That makes a difference in the effort side, right? So looking at your trip and what you're planning on doing, is the lightweightness offsetting the extra work that you have to take for that lightweightness, or the area it takes up in your pack? So keep that kind of stuff in mind too with a lot of your gear.
As soon as you said that, first thing came to me was the original gasifying stoves, or more specifically, the knockoff brands of them. Great idea,
Yes.
by the way. I got nothing against them, but it's not going to replace a campfire. Yeah, they do burn incredibly efficiently, but you're constantly feeding them. You will go pretty much insane if that is going to be your fire for the night, because you literally feed it about every 2 to 3 minutes.
Well, they were meant to replace your
Cooking
gas
stove.
stove.
But when
For
I got
cooking.
mine, for some reason, I was thinking this is going to be great because now I have a closed-in fire and I can have little fires at night when the fire weather is up. One, it doesn't work that way, and two, literally drive you insane trying to feed it.
So interestingly, I have the solo stove, like the larger one, the bonfire, I think it is, and we have it at the camper. And I do find it better in some ways than a regular campfire. I really do. But what I found, and this is where I'm going to sound so not woodsy, wood pellets work way better in it.
Yep.
And so, I got to let you go in a second, but basically the end result is when you're just at a campsite or you got the room to do it, filling it with wood is expensive if you have to buy your wood or if you have to gather your wood. But wood pellets are actually cheaper in a lot of ways. $5 wood pellets is actually more than $5 worth of cut and split wood. And you just pour it in, and honestly, I get like a full one. I can get 2 hours of solid burning and 2 hours of solid red coals. So that's 4 hours out of one fill. And I think I can get 2 fills out of a 40-pound bag. So you could get a really good runtime out of these things. It's efficient. It's fun. It works. It doesn't make you feel like a man. It doesn't make you feel like you're roughing it. But it does work, and there's a place for it. When you're, car camping or you're camping in a provincial park and you're around a lot of people, sometimes that makes sense. But if I was going deep in the woods, I'm not dragging 3 bags of pellets. So I would much rather cut down a few pieces of wood and have a standard campfire. And honestly, it is more enjoyable in its own way. But think if you're entertaining people, you don't want to have to be constantly fueling the fire, and you're just having a chat, that kind of makes sense. So keep that in mind. But yeah, we should wrap up. I have somebody trying to get hold of me, apparently.
Yep, absolutely. We're at 33 minutes anyway. Good spot as any to end, and that's what we're going to do here tonight. Thanks for joining us. It's great to be back after the holiday. Hopefully nobody missed us too much. Thanks to all the folks that joined us here in the comments. Once again, if you're going to check out Bill over there at Survival Lore, we're also going to be talking to Bill later on this month. We're going to have him on the podcast, as I mentioned, so be sure to check back with us then. To see what we're talking about. Thanks to Eric and Steve. We'll talk to you all next week. Until then, get out there, be safe, have fun, tell us about it. Night, everybody.
Bye.